Hello friends, welcome to Edwiki Learning channel. Please do subscribe to get more updates on the DevOps concepts. This video is part of the full course AWS DevOps Practitioner training. Please do check the description below to get the link for the complete full course. Without further delay, let's get into the video. Thank you.
Welcome back, team, and I hope by now, right, you are able to deploy at least one single resource in the AWS cloud using your Visual Studio Code as a development platform or the development tool, right? Sounds interesting. So, what do you think so far? The Terraform is easy or difficult? Thank you. And we'll get into some of the use cases today to understand the more capabilities of the Terraform tool. As part of that, let me clean up this existing whole bunch of code, okay? So I'm just removing everything today and I'll start writing the code from scratch one more time, right? And we'll see some of the use cases, okay? And today my goal is I wanted to deploy a VPC setup, the VPC architecture in the AWS cloud, okay? So what I do is I'll just create a simple folder, and in that folder I'm going to keep my Terraform code, right? So let's say I will create a folder as VPC. Now inside this VPC folder I'll start writing my Terraform code, right? My intention is to deploy the VPC architecture in the AWS cloud, right? And I think we already familiar about the VPC architecture, right? The VPC subnet, public subnet, private subnet, internet gateway. We already done that kind of architecture, right? Now let me do the same thing using a Terraform code. Okay. So I think the in the folder, right? Let me create a file. So I'll create a file called README. So usually the README will be like this: README in uppercase, dot empty is in lowercase. So this is basically a informational file, right? So basically in the README file, we need to start putting your expectations, like what is that you are trying to develop, how your code works, right? And how to use this code if someone has to use this, some information, right? So that's how this README will help as a documentation, right? To know what it is all about. Got me? So in this README file, so I'm just putting some documentation. So my goal is to create a VPC architecture using Terraform. Okay. So that is just a simple documentation. It's up to you how you wanted to document your steps, guys. Got me? So that's fine. Now let me start writing the code here. I'll just create a one file, and so the very first file that I'm going to create is the provider.tf, correct? So this should be inside the VPC folder. That's what I'm trying to keep all of my VPC related project files into a single folder, right? Good. So you all familiar, right? Any file that is having the extension with the .tf, that file name can be anything. So there is no rule that the file should be like provider only. No, it can be any file, but always it's meaningful to give the 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 names that appears, that will tell you exactly what kind of the code that you are going to keep inside, right? Well, so I'll just go to this provider.tf file, and obviously first we need to define our provider, right? So by now we already familiar some of the concepts, right? How to go to Terraform documentation, how to get the syntaxes and all. So now I think we can directly go and start working on this, right? So I'm starting with the provider block of code, and let me give the block name as provider, and the provider type is AWS, correct? So now within the provider block, I need to tell that the resources I'm expecting it to be created in which region and specify the value over there. Correct. So the requirement, right? I'm following the best practices too. Okay. So I don't want to give the value as a hard coded, right? So in order to apply the best practices, I wanted to use, or I wanted to give the value as a variable, right? And let me use my variable as region, correct? It's up to you what is the variable name that you wanted to use, right? It can be anything that you like it. Remember the single statement, guys. The left side, whatever you are using, that is up to the documentation. How the Terraform is expecting, you should be keeping the same as per the documentation. The right side, whatever you are using, this is basically your choice, right? Your values. So even the variable name that you wanted to use, it can be your choice. But to make it more readability and to make it more best practice way, it's always better to use the argument name as a variable name as well. That way, by looking into the variable name, we can easily understand that what is the purpose of this variable, what kind of the value that we wanted to keep in this variable. You got me what I'm trying to? So let's say here, if you do any ABC variable, that doesn't mean, or that doesn't explains exactly what is the purpose of this variable and what kind of the value that I need to give it to here, right? That's the reason. So it's better to use the same argument name in the variable as well. That improves the code quality and the readability as well. Now, whenever you are actually expecting the value to be rendered from the variable, and obviously the variable has to be declared, right? So in order to make more improvised Terraform development, right? It's not a best practice to keep all of your code it into a single file. Hence the reason now let me split this into multiple files. So now I'll start creating one variables.tf file. Then in this variable.tf, let me start declaring my variable. This is called as a declaration part. Okay, and in this declaration, you need to define the variable, which variable that you wanted to declare. Okay, and inside the variable block, now you can define the default value if you want to, right? Giving the default value is always optional, but if you want, yes, you can give the default value here. The only advantage giving the default value here is, for any reason, if someone forget to give the value in your variable.tf vars, right? So your code will not get failed saying that, hey, I don't have any value, right? That is that's the reason why the people will keep some default values as well. But this is all optional. I can remove it as well, right? So now, okay. So in order to give the value for this variable, and again, I'm keeping the value in a file called terraform.tfs, correct? Create a file and keep your variable over there, and let me give the value over there. US East 1 is your value. Uh, Now, when I'm doing this code development, guys, it doesn't matter where do you get start with. Usually, you prepare a plan in the README file. I mean to say, you make a plan how you wanted to create your whole VPC infrastructure, right? So you create a plan that, hey, first I wanted to, define a provider block. So first I need to define a provider block. You prepare the plan basically, right? Then I need to deploy the VPC. Then I need to deploy the internet gateway, right? Then I need to deploy the subnet. Correct, you got me? So like that, you make some plan here. Accordingly, you go and start writing the code and start keeping them it into the resource blocks, right? That's how the README works. It doesn't matter in which order you create these. It doesn't matter and how many number of files that you create. It doesn't matter whether you are keeping the entire code it into one file, right? I already explained this that, right? When you are actually executing the code, the Terraform will never ever worry about the files. All the .tf files will be combined it into a single file, and that file will be processed. So no matter you develop the entire code it into one file, no matter whether you split it into 5 files, you split it into 10 files, it doesn't matter. It doesn't look at the file order, the file names, and how many files that you are kept in. By default, right, your Terraform apply command is going to collect all the .tf files in the present working directory, and it will combine the code of all the files it into one single entity, and it will just process it at one go. Is it clear? Because I see a question related to this in the chat window, right? So it never worry about the number of .tf files. At the end of the day, this is treated as one single file only, right? This is just for our convenience purpose. Whether you develop the code it into one file or into multiple files, that is for our convenience, our readability purpose. But Terraform doesn't make it as a difference. For it always a single file because it is going to combine that it into one single file only, right? And the README file is not a mandatory in your development. The README file will help you to make or to understand what the code is all about, right? What is that you are going to write in the code, maybe preparing the plan, or let's say you have developed the code today, tomorrow someone else is using your code, right? They have to understand, right, what is this code is all about, correct? If you have written the code, maybe you know very well about the code what it is doing, but if someone else is using your code, they should know what it is, right? Probably they can't understand by going to the code directly. Maybe they can understand it by using the plain text format English, right? So it's better to give some high level documentation in the readme file that helps the people to understand what it is about. But it's always optional whether you keep the readme file, whether you don't keep it, it doesn't care about it. So your Terraform will never process the readme file. That is just for our documentation purpose to improve the readability, and basically this is to let others to understand what is that you are writing the things in your project, right? Okay, so I'm aligning towards the questionnaire that I see in the chat window as well, guys. Though those are small things, but still, yeah, it makes big difference if we know those things, right? So here in the below channel, like it is saying history restored. Don't worry about that. Usually, right, when you unexpectedly close your browser, the next time when you open the browser, it will ask you, hey, you want me to restore the previous sessions, previous tabs, correct? If you say yes, it will reopen all the previous tabs automatically for you, right? So same way, right, what were this terminal was opened before I closed the Visual Studio, right? That is telling that, hey, your terminal is restored again. So that means it is automatically giving me the terminal. That's only the difference here. Just say that you got the terminal back into the same state how it was there before, right? Before when I close this Visual Studio Code, right? That's how it works. Well, now if I go here, okay, now let me come here. Yeah, here. So the thing is, guys, here I'm actually giving the value to this region variable, right? And this is the value that I'm giving in. So what kind of the data value that I wanted to give to this variable? You know what I mean? So the value should be in a quote mark, or the value should not be in a quote mark. The value should be in a braces. You got me? So how do what kind of the value that you wanted to give to this particular variable? Remember, yesterday when I was writing the code, right? If your argument is expecting one single value and you are keeping that value in a quote mark, that means your value is treated as a string. When I say string, the string is the data type that represents that this is the alpha numerical word format. So that's what you see here. The pop-up says that this is actually a string type of the data. And we have already seen the other type of the data, which is the map of strings, correct? Remember, when I was giving the tags, right? The tag is not a single value, right? Your tag argument is expecting the multiple key value pairs. In that scenario, your data type should be a map of strings, in a way map, right? So who said this case? Who will tell that for this particular region or variable, whatever it is, right? For this variable, your data type should be a string, should be a map of string, or should be something else. Who decides that, or who will explain this? This is actually a AWS requirement, right? It's not a Terraform requirement. When the Terraform is asking the AWS, hey, can you do this for me, right? The Terraform has a requirement. If it is a region, definitely it is a single value, right? If it is a key pair, it is a single value. If it is a security group, it will be multiple values. If it is a tag, it will be a multiple key pair values, correct? So whether the AWS is accepting the single value or the multiple value, based on that, we need to decide your data type should be a string, should be any other format, correct? So sometimes it is difficult to understand for which variable you wanted to give what kind of the data value, correct? So to improve the readability in your variable declaration, you can always say that what kind of the value that you wanted to give. Okay, let me do one more time. Right. So what kind of the value that you are trying to give to this particular variable, and you see the suggestions here, guys. The Terraform, sorry, the Visual Studio Code is suggesting that the data type can be a bool, can be a list, can be a map, can be a number, can be a string. So what are these? All these are the different data types that we can give to a variable. Based on the requirement, what kind of the data type that you wanted to give to this region variable, you go and choose it from this list. In this case, for the variable called region, my value always to be a string variable. Why it is string? This is just a alphanumerical value that I wanted to give, and always the region will be only one, right? I can't tell that go and use multiple regions in a single resource. So let me take it as a string. That's it. But giving the type inside the variable block is all optional, right? The Terraform will never worry about this second line. This is again to improve the readability. If someone else is using your code, they can easily understand that, okay, region is the variable, it need a string value. Accordingly, they will try to supply the value in the variable.tf vars files. But whether you give this type, whether you don't give the type, Terraform treat it as a same. Getting me? This is just to improve the readability. You will not get into the confusion tomorrow, because today you might have been written the code by following the documentation. After a month of time, you itself will forget that what kind of the value that I need to give to this variable. Getting me? Hence the reason, if you maintain this type, right, after a month, if you are revisiting your code, you itself can you know remember that, okay, this is the string type of the value that I need to give to this a specific variable. That makes more matured code. Good. So that's what it is. Now the provider block is completely ready. Now let me go ahead and deploy the VPC. So I'll create a one more file here as vpc.tf file. That's where I wanted to create a VPC resource. Now obviously it will be a resource block, correct? Whenever I'm creating any resource, it will be a resource block, and you need to define the resource type, right? The resource type will be AWS underscore VPC, and you see some suggestions as well. And this is my type. If you don't remember, right, always we need to depend on the documentation as usual, correct? Initially, I'm doing all these exercises or showing you the practice, okay? Let's say, hey, Terraform, I wanted to know how to deploy AWS VPC. So get into the Terraform resources documentation and go to the specific VPC specific documentation, and you identify the resource type and look into your argument reference and follow this particular argument reference to pick up the required argument that we can use to give your values, correct? So this is CIDR underscore block is the argument, and let me make it as a variable. Let's say var dot CIDR underscore block. And here again, you need to give the name. Let's say this is web server VPC. Any name would be fine. This is the name that the Terraform is using to store the resource related metadata information in the state file. We have seen that as well. Right now, as usual, this variable has to be declared here. Variable name. We can give the type. So I'm not doing that for now. So let me go to tfvars. This is my variable, and let me give the value as 192.168.0.0/16. Done. So maybe when I'm not giving this a type and all, right, why should I be worried about giving this more space? I can do like this. In one single liner itself, I can manage the entire variable declaration, right? Good. Yeah, the VPC is done, guys. Now let me go ahead and create what? Maybe internet gateway, correct? So maybe internet gateway, I'll try to put it into a different file, okay? But I do recommend not to worry about keeping the code it into multiple files at the time of the development itself. So at the beginning, when you're writing the code, you try to write all the code it into one single file. Then once you get into the state where you almost done the coding part, right, then you split that into multiple files so that the speed of operation will be more. I mean to say, of course, your code always should be a well matured one, but don't expect you write a code right from the step one itself as a matured code. You first focus on writing the high level code, then you think of optimization and you make a better practices. You got me what I'm trying to, right? So let me put a one more resource block here as well for now, right? Now I need to worry about what is the resource type for my internet gateway, correct? Let me get it from documentation. I wanted to know, right, what is the resource type for internet gateway. Right now you see here, this is the type of the type for internet gateway. Let me use that. Let me give this. Let's say this is my web IGW. Any name would be fine. Now let me see the argument reference. You see the argument reference. Following arguments are supported. Now we need to give this internet gateway has to be attached to which VPC ID. You see this? Okay, let me give this VPC ID. This is the argument that it is accepting, right? So this is the VPC ID, and let me give the equal var there. Now you need to tell that this particular internet gateway to be get attached to which VPC, correct? Usually the internet gateways will be attached to the VPCs only. Now, do you have the VPC ID with you guys at this time? No, right? The VPC is not yet created. The VPC will be created as part of the first block, correct? So you don't know what is the VPC ID, but you know that the Terraform is going to create and maintain the VPC ID as part of this block. How do you get a ID of a VPC? To get a ID, you reference that, hey, get a ID from this AWS underscore VPC, sorry, get a ID from AWS underscore VPC, get a ID from this particular resource, and the value to be a ID. It's automatically giving the suggestions. Take that. How do you know this? This is the type, this is the name, and you know that this is actually the attribute that is exported by the VPC block. We already seen this syntax yesterday, and even we need to get into the documentation to understand it. So usually if you go to the VPC documentation, Terraform AWS VPC, right? So if you look into the documentation in the attribute reference, you see that these are the attributes that are actually exported for you, and ID is the attribute that I'm interested on, right? And you specify that here. That's it. I'm done. So that's how the Terraform can understand the dependencies, guys. Now, when the Terraform is processing this code, it can understand that okay, this this internet block is depending on the VPC, correct? It can understand this code. Then it know that first it has to deploy the VPC, then it has to deploy the internet gateway. That's how it will automatically understand the dependencies as per this code block itself. We don't need to explicitly define that, hey, this is how the sequencing, right, of these blocks. Got me what I'm trying to? Accordingly, the Terraform will go and request the AWS. The Terraform first will request the AWS to create a VPC, then it will request the AWS to create an internet gateway. That's how it can follow the block level sequencing automatically. And this is how we need to reference to another resource, right, which is getting created as part of the same project. And this is the syntax, right? The output block is not here. The output block purpose is different, guys. The output block is purpose is to export your values to your console level or to outside of the project level, right? This is not an output block. I can directly reference to that in which resource type, in which resource name, and what will be the value that is coming up there. That's it. It should work, right? So as of today, the stateful is not there, right? So I'm not getting this syntax from the state. Yesterday I have shown you so that we will understand it, but without worrying about the state file, I can compose the syntax, because definitely I know that once the project is deployed, it is going to store the values in the state file in this fashion only. How do I know? That I got it from the documentation itself, right? What are all attributes that are exported, that is the way how it will be storing the values in the state file as well. So I can write the code now itself without looking after the code, sorry, the actual values in the state file. I'm done with my internet gateway, right? So maybe in order to make it more easier, maybe yes, I can put that into one more file as igw.tf and keep my internet gateway over there. Good. So what else, guys? Probably now I need to create a subnet. Let me do that. So maybe I'll create a subnet here, subnet.tf. Probably these subnets I wanted to create it as a private subnets. So private subnet.tf file, right? Now let me do resource block right? And I wanted to know what is the resource type for subnet. Just come here. Let me search for this. Sorry. Hey, I wanted to know Terraform AWS subnet resource. Get into the documentation. AWS underscore subnet is the resource tab. Copy that, keep it there. And let's say this is subnet 1. Any name would be fine, up to you. Now you see the argument reference here, right? And follow these arguments to see what and all options are needed for you. So once you get into these arguments and all, right, once you got more familiarity, you can directly go to these examples. You see some of the examples are already given for you how you can write your block of code for this resource. You see now for this AWS subnet, you can give the VPC and the subnet CADR and some of the tags. So it's easy now. Once you get a familiarity, you can directly take this example usage and just replace here. And let's say this is my subnet 1. And already you see here, already the respect to syntax is given. Just need to modify as per your use case. In my case, the VPC ID, I can get it from where? In the vpc.tf file, the type, the name dot id, right? So type the name dot id. This is what it is. Syntax is ready. The CADR block, okay. So this is hard coded. I wanted to, make it as a variableize, right? I will say var dot, this is the subnet 1. This is the private subnet, right? Private subnet CADR block. So this is the variable name. Okay, let me declare a variable here. The variable name, I don't want to give the type over there, which is optional anyway. Now you go to the value section and define the variable there. 192.168.1.0/24 is my subnet. So this is the example that I have taken, right? If you really think that this example is not giving all the related input arguments, you can go and start looking into this argument reference and start taking some of the arguments that you really think that these are missing. Maybe availability zone, right? I wanted to tell that this subnet should be get attached with which availability zone. If you really in confusion, how do I know what and all inputs that I need to give to this resource? What is the best way, guys? Initially, you go to the AWS and start creating that particular resource. Then you will know that what and all inputs that the AWS is expecting to create this resource. Accordingly, you go and start finding the corresponding argument name and just follow the documentation and just give it over there, right? So usually if you go to create subnet, you see that it is asking for VPC ID, right? Then it is asking for the subnet name, availability zone, CADR. Then you will know what arguments that we need to give it here. So the tags, accordingly you start identifying the argument name and start giving the value. Make sense, guys? So let's say this is a private subnet availability zone. That is the variable that I wanted to use to give the value for the availability zone. As usual, let me declare that variable here. That's how the people will do the development. Let me give the value hit here. So US-East-1A is the zone that I wanted to use. These are the tags. So this is the name tag. So we can give the variable as well here. Let's say this is the var tag name. right? So declare the variable. This is the tag name. Go to terraform.tfrs. This is the tag name that I wanted to use. Let's say this is the web server. I'm done with my private subnet, guys. So in the same way, let's say I wanted to have one more subnet that is for a public subnet. So the syntax will be same, right? Let's say the same syntax I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste. See? So the first block is actually creating one subnet. The second block will create another subnet. The first block is for private, the second block is for public subnet. Important. Whenever you are actually creating multiple resources of the same kind, you see, the first is also a AWS underscore subnet kind. The second also AWS underscore subnet kind. Both are same kind, right? The same type. Why? I'm creating a one more subnet. So the name should not be the same. You should ensure that the name is, unique. If this is subnet 1, this should be a subnet 2, right? That's how we need to maintain the unique name, because it is when it is going to store this information in the state file, it has to store the details with the help of the type and the name only. This is how we will be identifying the resource, correct? So the combination of type and the name should be unique. That will tell which resource that it is going to refer. Getting me? That's it. Now I will say maybe this is the public subnet that I wanted to make on, right? So what I'll do is the VPC is same. Maybe here the variable, I'll say this is the public subnet CADR block. This is the public subnet availability zone. Done. Now let me define the respective two variables for public as well. I'll just copy paste these two lines. This is the public subnet CADR block. This is the public subnet availability zone. Done. Go to tfvars. Let me duplicate these two variables. It's not duplicate really. This is a different server, different resource. This is public. This is public availability zone. Let's say 1B is the public availability zone. Let's say 2.0/24 is the public subnet. I'm done, guys. If you still think that why should I be keeping public and private subnets in same file? Okay, no problem. It's your readability, right? So let me move that code it into one more file saying that this is the public subnet. Sorry, this is the public subnet .tf file, and I'm keeping all the public subnets here, so that it's easy to understand the code from the different files of the different type of the resources that you have been maintaining. What else, guys? So after the public subnet, probably we need to create a route table, right? Correct. So now let me create a one more file saying that this is the route table.tf file, right? Now let's start putting the resource block. Now get into the documentation. I want to know the Terraform for AWS route table. Okay. So AWS route table is the resource type. Let me keep it there. Let's say this is the private route table. I'll give it as private underscore RT. Now you look into the examples and you look into the argument reference. You need to specify that the route table to be created in which VPC. Let me give the VPC there. Now we need to specify that is there any other details that I need to give here, guys, at the time of creating a route table? If you have any doubts, let me go to here, route table, create a route table. You see, when I'm creating a route table, I just need to give the name and the route table to be in which VPC. That's it, right? Very simple. So I don't need to give any routes and all. Okay, I'll not give. Here also I'll not give anything. So I just need to give only the VPC information. No other information needed. Correct? So how do I know the VPC ID, guys? AWS underscore VPC. You see, it's automatically given you the suggestion because in this particular folder, web underscore VPC is the resource name that I given in the vpc.tf file, right? It's automatically giving you that. Okay. In that, I wanted to use the ID. Then my private route table is ready. Same way, you can create a public route table as well. Maybe the name has to be changed. So this is the private route table. This is the public route table. Maybe I can give the names as well. Let me see here. Maybe it makes more easy. The name is always a tag, right? So this is the name. So this is the where dot. Okay, this is the public route table. This is the sorry. This is the public route table. Public route table name, right? Private route table name. This is the public route table name. Now you declare them the variables. I'm just giving the names, okay? Sorry. This is the one and give the name for that. This is the private route table name. This is, I will say, this is web server private route table. You see the rt.tf is showing red mark because this particular variable is not declared. So it's still showing in a red mark. I'll go to variable.tf file, declare a variable, give the variable name. I'll go to terraform.tf vars variable name. Let's say this is a web server public route table. Just giving some name tag. That red mark is now disappeared. I'm done with creating two route tables, one for public, one for private. It's very sensitive to understand all of these guys. So as I see a question in the chat window, are you going to attach the internet gateway to the public route table or the route in the route table? Route table, route, both are two different things, guys. Okay, that's why I have shown you this as well to avoid the confusion. You see, at the time of creating a route table, you just create a route table. Is there any option here to go and use the internet gateway and attach the internet gateway? All these things are not here, right? When the time of creating a route table, you just create a route table by telling it has to be in which VPC. That's it. Once the route table is created, then you go to that route table. In the route table, you see the routes. In here, you need to start adding a route by going to the edit route, create a add route. This is how you give the internet gateways, right? That means here also I'm following the same approach. First, I created a route tables. Now I'll go and start creating a route. Are we good with this? To create a route, I'll create a one more resource. Let me see what is the resource type to create a route. I want to know the Terraform to create a AWS route. You see here, route table is there, route is also there. Now I'm creating a route. AWS underscore route is the resource type. Let me create a route for my public. I'm creating a public route. Now you see here, how do you create it? This is where you need to tell that, hey, I'm creating a route. This route I wanted to create for which route table, and I wanted to create for, this is basically your route details for which destination the traffic should go through which gateway. This is the information that you need to specify, right? If you look into your AWS one more time, at the time of adding a route, you need to tell that, right? This route you need to give to which route table, what is the destination, what is the target. There are three fields that we need to give. The same three fields that we need to specify here as well. You just need to look into the documentation here, right? So the one is the route table ID is the one which we need to specify that this particular route you are creating it for which route table. Then let me see what and all important things. You see here, probably gateway underscore ID is the one to tell that the traffic should go through the internet gateway. Then you should tell that the source, right? I meant to say the destination. Yeah, you see here, destination CADR block, right? Take that, put it here. Getting me, guys? So now the destination CADR, I wanted to give the value. Usually it will be 0.0.0/0, right? This is what I wanted to create as a destination, correct? So maybe I'll keep it as a variable. Let me define that here as well. I'll define the value here. That's where, like, though I'm doing the Terraform development, having the AWS knowledge is very important. I'm done with this destination CADR block. Now let me come to this gateway ID. Here I need to tell the internet gateway, right? That's where the traffic has to go. Let me close this bracket. How do I get this internet gateway ID, guys? The internet gateway is already created in the igw.tf file, right? You see, this is where the internet gateway is created, and the type is this one, right? So we need to do this referencing. Hey, get the internet gateway ID from this type, and this is the name. Now you see the ID. These are the possible attributes that are exported by this internet gateway type. So we just take ID here because I'm interested on ID. Just that's it. I'm done with this second line. Same way, this route you are expecting to be created for which route table, correct? We need to give the route table ID. And this is the public route table. Sorry, this is the public default route. I wanted it to be created for the public route table. So specify that, hey, I want this to be for AWS route table type, and public route is the name, and take the ID from there. I'm done. Now it will create a route. This route will be attached to this particular route table. That is how you need to start doing the coding and start keep on increasing your number of resources, dependencies, all this stuff, guys. Are we good with this? Same way you can go with private route, private NAT gateway, attach the NAT gateway, everything. Now the goal is for me not to show you how to create a resources, every resource in AWS. Once you know the approach, you can get started with writing anything that you like it. Agree with me? Like now I don't need to go and show you how to create a security group, how to create a NAT gateway, how to create a Route 53, all these things, correct? You know the process, get the documentation and fill up the details and get it ready. We are on same page. Maybe once you know this whole process, right, how to prepare your Terraform code by following their documentation and following these arguments, all these things, then let me go to ChatGPT and let me use the ChatGPT as my Terraform assistance. Okay, so hey, you are my Terraform developer. Okay, developer assistance. I'm telling to ChatGPT that hey, you are my Terraform developer assistant. So if I have any Terraform related questions, you need to help me. That's what I'm telling the expectations to ChatGPT. You see, it's telling that, hey, I'm here to help with your Terraform development. What do you need assistance with? It is just asking me. Now I'll ask my ChatGPT that, hey, can you give me a code to deploy AWS VPC components? What's happening, guys? You see here, it actually, given you the code and it has a provider block, it has a VPC block, it has a subnet block, right? It has a, you see the subnet A and the subnet B as well, right? It's a best practice. At least it should be having two subnets, right? And you see the one more subnet block. Now it has been explained you how to use this command, how to run the Terraform apply, all these things, correct? At least half of the code is ready, guys, correct? Using this ChatGPT. Now let's say the internet gateway, the private subnet, public subnet, all are not included here. Okay, let me ask the ChatGPT. This is looks good. Can you, can you also include private and public subnets with route tables and NAT gateway? Let's see what it will tell you. Now you see the along with the existing code, provider block, VPC block, the subnet block. Now you see, guys, it actually added underscore public to that just to differentiate which is public and which is private. Okay, public and this is the private one. There are two private subnets. You see it is actually started creating a route table for you, and you see that it is actually making this syntax. It is actually referencing to your internet gateway, right? And this is the private route table, and it is actually doing some association. This is still we have not done that, correct? Because in our code as of now I did not tell that, right, your route table should use which, sorry, your pubnet, your subnet should use which route table, that I did not uh, given in my code, correct? Getting my guys? If you go back to the AWS one more time, once the route table is created, we need to go to subnet association, and here we need to attach the subnet, right? That's where you are telling that, hey, this is the route table that you need to use. Then only your subnet will start using this route table, correct? This step I even did not do in my coding here so far. If you look into the chat GPT, that is included here. You see, this is what you do, the route table association, and tell that this subnet should use this route table. This is the block. Take that block because the other rest of the code is already there. So that's the reason I'm just taking that block. This is public subnet route table. Sorry, maybe I'll give it in rt.tf file. So now you tell that, hey, so yeah, so which one, subnet 1 or subnet 2? I think subnet 2. Subnet 2 dot id. So this subnet I wanted to attach to this particular route table, the public route table dot id. That's how we need to write a code. So then you can avoid reading the documentation part, guys. So this is helping you. And you see here, it is actually creating a NAT gateway, and it actually deploying the EC2 server as well, just to make it more readable. Then it is attaching the Elastic API as well. Are we good with this? Yes, you can use the ChatGPT in working environment, not a worry. Most of the cases, no one worry about how you are writing the code. It's up to you. Once you make a code, you make it organization standards. I mean to say here, right? It may be using some example names, right? You can't copy paste exactly. Wherever you need to change the names, you need to change those names as per your project specific. Okay, now what I do is this is good. Can you make it variable? Can you include variables? Okay, can you include variables? Because currently the code that I have got it here, right? You see the values are hard coded most of the cases. Maybe here values are hard coded, right? I want them to be variabilized. It's writing the code for you. That's how it will do the improvements based on your input, and it will give you the thing, right? And that works, guys. Okay. So once you know the whole Terraform flow, how it works, this is way easy to develop your code and just copy paste it and do the necessary changes wherever it is. It will give you more optimized code than what you write it here manually as well. Okay, so I just wanted to show you how you can get use of the ChatGPT. Thank you. Let me come back now. Now I think I did almost the VPC project, right? Let me go ahead and start deploying this. Okay. What I do? Simple thing. When you are running the Terraform command, make sure that your present working directory is same where your code is currently. The first command that I'm trying to do is Terraform init to initialize the project. Why it is empty? Because my code is inside the VPC folder, right? I should go inside the VPC folder. Now it should work. Terraform
ಅದು
init.
ಗೊತ್ತಾಗಲ್ವಾ ಓಡಾಡ್ತಾ ಮನೇಲಿ ಶಿಸ್ತಿಂದ ಹಾಳಾಗಿ ಹೋಗ್ತಾರೆ.
I kept you on mute, guys. Thank you. So now you see that there is a error. Okay, it is trying to initialize the project and it is throwing a error. We need to spend some time in reading the error. The error says that, hey, on vpc.tf file, line number 5, there is a problem. Okay, you need to go to vpc.tf file, go to line number 5, basically, right? And it is telling that yeah, the web underscore igw was already declared at igw.tf file at so on so on plus. This is telling that, hey, there is a line number 5 which is actually already there in the igw.tf. It's very clearly telling you what exactly the problem, where exactly the problem. Just go and fix it. You may be wondering now, where is this line number 5, correct? It is complaining about line number 5, but I don't see anything in the line number 5, right? But some code was there in the line number 5 that was actually copied it into igw.tf. After it removed the code from here, I did not save this file. It is still thinking that the code is there because I did not save the code after I moved this code block. You see the white bubble there? Let me save the file. I did not save the file, that's the reason. Let me initialize the project one more time. It started off creating a .terraform folder for you, and it is downloading the plugins. It will keep those plugins in the .terraform folder that helps the Terraform to interact with the AWS. Done. Now let me do Terraform apply. You see in the left side it's automatically creating a state file for you, and it will keep all the resources uh, actual information, actual metadata information in the state file. For reference, it is going to add total 8 resources for you. If you say yes, it will start deploying this whole bunch of resources for you. Sounds good? Done. My VPC is deployed. I did not use any output so far, but fine. Now, if you look into your AWS, and I'm sure one other VPC might have been deployed here. You see, I got one more VPC. Maybe this VPC, this one. That's what it is, guys. Okay. Now, let me do Terraform destroy. I'm just cleaning the stuff. Now you can see the how easy it is. If it is UI, you need to struggle a lot to delete all of these components, right? Going there and there in multiple places. Now it will help you to delete all of them at one single go. Yes, I want to delete them. It's done. Once it's deleted, you see the state file here, guys. Your state file is almost empty. You see, your resources are empty because it's all deleted. It's updated your state file that no resources are exist. The resources are empty. That way, your project is clean. That's how it works. So far, so good. Now let me remove this state files because I wanted to cover up one other scenario. I'm just removing all this stuff. Yeah, this is my actual code. Now the question for you now, right? So what is the case if I wanted to deploy a second VPC? I want to deploy one more VPC. Like I need to deploy multiple VPCs. Let me put it this way. I wanted to deploy total 5 VPCs. How do you do that, guys? As of now, the code that I have written here, this is helping me to deploy one single VPC architecture, right? It create one VPC. In that VPC, it creates the required subnets, all this stuff. I wanted to have total 5 this type of VPC architectures, because when you run Terraform apply multiple times, it is not going to create multiple VPCs, right? It is going to create one state file. It compare the state file. It will tell you that infrastructure is already up to date. I have shown you all that already, correct? Now, in Terraform, every folder is called as a or treated as one single project, guys. In this case, all the code that you have written inside the VPC folder, this entire VPC folder is treated as one single project, correct? Because in this folder, all the .tf files are processed at one go. You are not telling that, hey, you consider this file, you don't consider this file, no, right? The moment when you run the command, it's picking up all the files. So that folder is called as a one project. One project will have one state file, will have only one single deployment. Now, if I wanted to deploy at least 2-3 different VPCs, right? What is that I need to do, guys? Maybe I need to create a one more folder, and this is my VPC2, correct? Following me? So I have one VPC folder that is to deploy a one VPC. Now to deploy the second VPC, right, as a second project, as a different project, then I will go to VPC2, and here also I'll start building my entire code, correct? Whatever you have developed in the VPC folder, everything now I need to develop in the VPC2 folder as well with the second VPC related information. That way, the first folder is for deploying the first VPC, the second folder of code is for deploying the second VPC. Agree with me? When I wanted to make them as a different project. That's the reason I'm using the statement, right? So, sorry, what happened to my console? Yeah. So in the first folder itself, right? In the first folder itself, yes, if you want, you can do this. So I can put multiple VPC blocks like this. One VPC block for one VPC, second VPC block for second VPC, the third VPC block for third VPC. Yes, you can do that. Then when you deploy, it creates total 3 VPCs. And in the same way, you do this for all the subnets, all the route tables as well, and you can maintain, not a worry. But the requirement that I have is each VPC should be treated as a different project altogether. You got me? If you start keeping all of these different entries in the same folder, at the end of the day, this is treated as one single project only, correct? In one single project, I am maintaining multiple VPCs. That is how my statement. I don't want that to be. So if you are keeping this type of multiple statements, it is going to create a one state file only. It is not going to create multiple state files because it's a single folder. When you get into the requirement, right? Sorry, when you get into the real time, right? We need to have everything to be deployed, treated as a different projects. Today, I wanted to deploy one project and create one VPC. After a month of time, let's say, right, your manager will ask you, hey, can you deploy another VPC because I wanted to work with a different project. I can't come and add my another block in the same folder and run it because I'm disturbing my existing project. No, I don't want to use the existing project to add my another resource as part of my different project. You got me what I'm trying to? So we need to take a decision. You are actually modifying the existing project, or you are trying to deploy as a different project altogether. Based on that, we need to take a call whether you need to update the existing folder or you need to make the whole different folder altogether. Are we good with the statement? Hence the reason in this case, I'm not going to add the multiple entries here itself in the same folder, guys. I don't want to because the requirement is right. I don't want to deploy the multiple VPCs as part of the same project. I wanted it to be a different project altogether. So definitely, if it is a different project, it should be a different folder. Then only I can maintain a different state file for my different projects. Each project will have its own state file. Are we on same page? Now, the problem that I see here, right? When I wanted to start writing the code for VPC2, what I need to do, guys? Same struggle I need to do, right? I need to create a vpc.tf, variable.tf, rt.tf, public subnet, private subnet, internet gateway, everything. Whatever I did it for VPC project, the same thing now I need to repeat for my VPC2 project as well, correct? That is where the code is getting duplicated because the logic is same, correct? Whether you deploy one VPC or 100 VPCs, at the end of the day, your core logic is same. You are going to create a VPC, public subnet, private subnet, public route table, private route table, internet gateway. That is not going to be changed, correct? That is still be the same. Tell me, guys, what is that it is actually changing? Only the values, correct? Maybe in the first VPC, my VPC CADR could be 192.168.0.0/16. Maybe the second VPC will have a different IP range. The third VPC may have a different IP range. That's how the values will get changed, but the overall, the resource integration, resource dependencies will still be the same. Agree with me? If then, why should I be worry about duplicating this whole bunch of code? You see, if I wanted to proceed with this approach, I need to repeat this same thing on the VPC2, correct? You see, like this. I just copy pasted all the files. No, that is not recommended, because why should I be duplicating the whole bunch of code again and again into multiple projects? So the expectation is you write a code at one single folder as one single project. You reuse the same code again and again in multiple projects when you are expecting the similar identical architecture is going to be deployed. So in this case, I don't want to rewrite this whole bunch of code again in the VPC2 folder like this. No, why I have to repeat the statements? So let me reuse this VPC folder without me, duplicating the code. So let me remove these files. You see my VPC folder, I just removed all the files. I don't want to do this approach. Whenever you are planning that you have created a bunch of Terraform code in one folder and you are expecting that code to be reusable in multiple other projects as well, then you define your project as a generic way, correct? Let's say in the VPC folder, whatever the code that I have written here, I'm expecting this code should be reusable again and again in multiple projects so that others need not to write a code again, right? If that is the case, you should not keep any values there, correct? When the code can be reusable, guys, whenever your code is written a generic way, not specific to the project, right? Whenever you written the code as a generic way, then your code can be reusable by multiple people, correct? Let's say I have written one code. If you wanted to use, right, you can't take my code as it is. But if I have written a code in a generic way without keeping the values to be specific to the project, then you can take my code and can reuse it for you, correct? Because the values are not included. That means whenever you wanted to reuse this whole bunch of code again and again, don't write your code as a specific to the project. You write a code as a module. The Terraform module is the concept of making your Terraform code as much as possible reusable it into multiple projects so that you write the Terraform code at one single location and start using that code wherever you wanted to without rewriting again and again. That's the concept of Terraform module. Being said that, now this VPC, under the VPC folder, whatever the code is there, I wanted to write this code as a Terraform module. Now a question for you at this time. If I want to make this VPC folder as a module, do you think I need to give these values, guys? Do I need to keep all of these values in my VPC folder when I'm expecting This should be like a Terraform module, not very specific to the project. Definitely no. So when you are writing the Terraform module, don't keep the values there, especially the values that you may think that keep changing from project to project. Tell me guys, right? I have given multiple values here, right? Do you think all these values are changing from project to project? Sometimes there will be some values which will be common, right, in everywhere. For example, you see this destination block. Do you think this is going to be changed from project to project? Like if I have some 5 VPCs, right, in all the 5 VPCs, this destination CADR block will be the same only. That is not going to be changed. Let's say the tag name, maybe I wanted to use the same tag name in everywhere. Maybe the CADR block, do you think this value will be the same? Not really. So this should be the unique queue. Every project will have their own VPC CADR. So when you are writing the Terraform module as a or thinking that the code has to be reusable, you need to decide which values will be the common across the projects, which values will be very specific to the project. Whichever you think that the values are pretty much common, let it be in my module itself. Whichever the values that you think that are not common, which is going to be changing from project to project, maybe especially these values. Right? Whenever you think that the values are keep on changing from project to project, right? You supply those values from your target project. Let's say now I wanted to deploy VPC2, right? When you are writing the code for VPC2, in the VPC2, I'm going to maintain those values. Terraform.tfvars. That means, so these are the values that are keep on changing from project to project, and I'm not keeping them as part of my module, and I'm supplying them from my target. Now, what are all things that you may what are all things may come from the project side, guys? Or maybe let me put it this way: which you think that will be common, which you think that will be unique from project to project? Let me go one by one. What about igw.tf file? This is going to be a common, right? The code is common. What about private underscore subnet.tf? Code is common. What about this provider.tf? Right? The provider.tf will move to your target VPC, because the provider.tf is not actually a block of code to create a resources. Understood me? Are you going to create a resources using this block? No, right? This is not a resource creation. I'm little worried about only the resources that are that I don't want to duplicate. The resource related code I wanted to reuse as much as possible. Right? This provider block is not going to create a resource. This is just to initialize the projects on the specific region. So it cannot be in a module itself. What about rd.tf? This is the common code, because this is all going to create a resources for you. Terraform.tfrs, yes, these are the common values. Variable.tf file. Now what are all changes, guys? All these values, right? All these variables, because right, because I already moved my values here, and the variables also should be declared here, right? So let me create a file, variables.tf file, and let me declare a variables there. So if you look into my VPC2 folder, Here I just have said the provider block. I actually declared my variables and I supplied the variables that I wanted to pass to my VPC. Now here I'll create one more file saying that main.tf, that's my main file that has to be get executed. Here I will say that I wanted to use the module to create my resources. My module name is VPC. It can be any name that you like it. Let's say this is a web server VPC. It's your name. Anything can be given here. Inside that, I will say that source. Hey, take the code from the VPC folder, because the VPC folder already having the entire code, right? Take the code from the VPC folder. Where is this VPC folder, guys? Currently, I'm writing the code from where? I'm writing the code in the main.tf, which is there in the VPC2 folder. From the VPC2 folder, I need to reference the VPC folder. So will it be a dot dot slash? Let's say I'm working on the VPC2 folder. So let me go there. You see, currently I am in the VPC folder. That is my project. VPC2 is my project, and I'm writing my VPC2. In the VPC2, I'm telling that, hey, the code that you get it from VPC folder, which is already there as a module fashion. So I'm referencing that. That is how it is. Now, whenever you're using this VPC code and this VPC code needs some values, right? And you define all the values. Let me take these values. These are all the values that I wanted to supply, right? So give these values as a input. Maybe you'll get some better idea once code is completed. Let me make them as variable. I'm done. I think these red marks will go away sooner. Hope so. That's okay. We'll wait for some time. These red marks should go away. I think I'm done with my second project, guys, the VPC2 project. Now look into this VPC2 folder alone. This VPC2 folder, whatever the code that I have written, this code is enough for me to deploy the VPC. What is there in the VPC2? I just declared the variables that I wanted to give. I maintained my values that I wanted to give. I said that, hey, this is the AWS is my provider. Do you think, did I write any code that is very specific to the resource deployments? No, right? I did not write any code related to my resource deployment. Anything related to the resources, I said that, hey, get the module from this folder and you supply all these values to this module, and that's it. Go and execute it. The code is already written in the module folder. That is where it is already. Let me execute my VPC2 folder. Currently, I am in the VPC2 folder. I wanted to deploy VPC2. So Terraform init. I'm working on the VPC2 folder. I'm just initializing my project. Currently, I am in VPC2 folder. I am executing the init command to initialize my project. And you see that it is actually creating .terraform folder in the VPC2 folder itself. And currently, I am in the VPC2. Now, let me run Terraform apply command. I'll look into this error, guys. In the main.tf, in the line number 1, it's saying that tag name is required, but no definition was not found. Okay. Yeah, this is all looks good, but for now, let me fix it in this way. We'll talk about giving the values there again. Okay. For now, let me supply all the values from here only. Okay. For now, I'm giving all the values from my client. I said like these are all common values that can be part of the module, right? I just wanted to quickly fix the problem. I'm giving all the values. Okay. The thing is, when we don't want to keep it more complicated at one go. Slowly, we need to increase the complexity. Okay. So if you look into the module now, just to recap, here in the module, you see that there are no variables, guys. Even I can remove this file, terraform.tf parts. This file itself, I'm removing it from the module. Okay. That values itself are not there now. The VPC folder is very generic now without having any values, with it just having the syntax to create the required resources, nothing else. And the variable declaration. The variable declaration should be there because I'm referencing those variables in the code somewhere, right? But the values are not there. That's what is more important. When you are using that module in your other projects, right? There I'm actually maintaining all the values and I'm passing those values to the module. Are we good with this? Now let me run apply one more time. I'm going to create 8 resources. Say yes. Currently, I am inside the VPC2. I'm repeating again. Okay. Currently, I'm inside the VPC2. Tell me, guys, confirm me. In the VPC2 folder, did I write the code to deploy my VPC resources? No, right? In the VPC2 folder, I only said that provider block, variable declaration, values. And in the main.tf, you see, I just referenced my module and I'm passing all these values. That's it. That's how we don't need to rewrite the code again and again. Now, if I ask you, hey, can you deploy a VPC, one more VPC as part of the another project? What do? I'll create a one more folder. Let's say VPC3. I want to create a VPC3, right? In the VPC3, again, you don't need to write the whole code, guys, correct? In the VPC3, all what you need to do is declare the variables, maintain the values. Let's say I wanted to deploy with, let's say 167 as an example. You just adjust the values how you are expecting in the, that's it, I'm done. My VPC3 is ready. Just go to your VPC3, right? Then Terraform init. All what you need to do is just modify the values how you are expecting the VPC to be. Don't worry about the actual VPC code to create internet gateway, attachment, public subnet, private subnet, all these things you don't need to. That code is now reusable. Every time when you are deploying the VPC, you reference to the existing VPC module, just pass the values. That's it. Terraform apply. Yeah, it is actually creating 8 resources. Yes, I want to. Now this is all a different project case. VPC2 is the different project which has its own state file. VPC3 has a different project which has its own state file, like that. But I'm not rewriting the code again and again. The code is at one single location, which is now acting as a module fashion. You invoke the module in your project and just supply the values. You see, my VPC is deployed. Any questions on the Terraform module and the purpose of the Terraform module? Being said that in the real time, usually you will be writing the Terraform code at one time. You will never write again and again. Let's say for VPC, there is one single VPC code written, right? And you kept that as a module. And every time when you are deploying the VPC, you just reference to the existing module, supply the values, deploy it. You are done. You don't need to write a code again. So most of the times now, can I say like writing the Terraform code for one use case is one-time activity? Yes. So let's say already someone might have been wrote the Terraform module. Then if you wanted to deploy, you don't need to write a code. Take the existing module and just pass the values, just deploy it over there. If you have the module already ready for your specific use case. I'm done for that today because I don't want to add more other scenarios as well. This is more enough to do some practice. So if any questions, do let me know, or else we are good for today. Now I can even go to ChatGPT that hey, I forgot to ask you, can you make the VPC code as module, right? Somewhere it is still writing. You see here, guys, now it is telling, hey, it has written the module for you. Now it is telling that, hey, now you can use this module in your Terraform. Now you see this is your actual project. It is just referencing to the existing module here and just passing the values. That's it. You see, this is a simple code to deploy your VPC. All the code is already there in the module section here. So the whole code is created for you. I'll just keep doing some changes. As I see a questions in the chat window, it's possible, right? Let's say I have the VPC3 project. In the VPC3 project itself, I wanted to create two VPCs. Let's say, let me put it that way. In the VPC3, I wanted to create two VPCs. In one project, I wanted to create two VPCs referencing to the same module. Possible. We need to do some looping. We need to improve my code little more complex to make that happen. Possible. And again, same thing. You will never worry about the name of the file. The name of the file can be anything. Terraform will never worry about the files, especially for the files having the .tf extension. The reason why I use the main, just best practice. It's easy to, because this is actually calling the module, right? Correct? So it's better to give like main, just best practice. But it can be any name that you like it. Any file having .tf extension can have any name that you like it, right? In this scenario, I'm just going for main, just a best practice, nothing much. Or you can even call it as a module.tf, where you are calling the module. Or you can call it as a web server.tf. Let's say I'm going to, sorry, this is VPC, right? You can say vpc.tf and call your VPC module. It's up to you. Now, to make the things more easier, let's say my goal is I wanted to deploy the VPC. Okay, I wanted to deploy the VPC. Let's say the VPC module code is already not written in my company. Let's say the VPC module is already not there. Do I need to write the VPC module now? Correct. So the Terraform says that, hey, if you are planning to deploy the VPC, let's say you don't have your own module. The VPC is very common, right? No matter in which company, which project, right? Everywhere the VPC architecture is almost same. So the Terraform itself has written the VPC module for you. You see, the Terraform has already created a VPC module for you. You see, already a VPC module is created for you. So the Terraform says that, hey, there is a module that I created already for you, which is called as a built-in module. You just refer to the built-in module and just supply the values. Let's say in this case, I'll just take this file. Let's say now I'll deploy VPC4. In the VPC4, in the main.tf, I'll just put this file. What I'm doing, guys, what is my source here? My source is Terraform AWS modules / VPC / VP the AWS. What it is? This is the built-in module. The Terraform will connect it to the Terraform repositories. It will download this module from there. It will supply these values. Then it will create a VPC. Then you don't need to write your module also. The module is itself is already written for you by Terraform guys. They kept it into their repositories. You refer to their module, supply your values there. That's it. Your VPC will be get deployed. But you need to understand how this module is written, because you did not wrote this, right? So go to their documentation and see this module, how the module is written, what and all inputs that you can give to this module by going to their module documentation and do all of this. Because if you have written the module, then you can go to your module here and see what and all values the module will expect it, right? But if the module is not written by you, then we need to follow the documentation and see the values. Just refer to the existing built-in module, that is also works fine. But believe me, in real time, people are not happy to use the built-in modules because you will not be having much control, right? Because someone else has written the code. You only can supply the value, not much customization, right? So you write your own module, refer to that and pass the values so that you have your own full control. Can you give me the code using built-in VPC module? You see now, it is actually giving the code using this built-in module. We don't need to write a module again. Same thing will work. Now, can you give me code to, to create easy to instance with user data and IAM role attachment? I'm just giving some other different use case just to show you how easy it is to build the code base. Done. Your code is ready. Just take it. Yeah, this is how to deploy the EC2 server and user data, IAM role, all this stuff. Any questions, guys? That's what is the Terraform for today. And I'll talk about few other enhancements, use cases, scenarios in the next lecture of Terraform. Sounds interesting, and hope this is easy now. Well, if no questions, so we are good, and I'll give you a beautiful assignment on this Terraform, guys. So you can just do a simple practice, and uh, all these code samples that we can use for practicing. I already kept a lot of Terraform use cases. I kept the reference code. Like today, I wrote the big chunk of code, right? All this code is already available in my repositories. So far, you guys don't know what is Bitbucket, how to use this. That's the reason I'm not referencing it. But I'll tell how to use this. In for now, I'll just give the link. Okay, so you just need to go to this link. I'll give this link for you guys. This is the link. If you go to this link, you can see the Terraform code for various different use cases. You can see the VPC code, right, and IAM code. This is where you can see how to create a IAM roles, right, and auto scaling group, load balancer. This is the code for deploying the auto scaling group, load balancer, all these things, security groups, launch templates. Okay, so I will give this link for you guys. Just go and download this code. You can even go here and click on download. This whole bunch of code will be get downloaded to your local as well. For now, I'm giving this link. If it is asking for sign up, just create an account with your email ID, guys. All right, that's how it is for today.